What is going on, you guys? Welcome to the video. Today I'm going to teach you everything you need to know in order to be successful when Talandre or T2 drops. So there's going to be a lot of information, so I'm going to just hop into it, man. I've created a document that essentially has most of the information that you will need in order to prepare for Talandre. Um, Now, just hopping right into it, man. The amount of materials that you're going to need for Talandre is absolutely insane. People that prepare will be um, people that prepare will be much further ahead than those that don't. People that don't prepare, you're just behind by default. I'm sure Amazon will incorporate some catch-up events to help you kind of alleviate the grind. However, still, as with any Korean MMO, people that prepare are just going to be ahead. And there are so many materials that you need for T2. I highly recommend proper preparation. That being said, the amount of trade unlock stones that you'll need, this is for just one gear set, you guys. Your armor, T2 accessories, T2 armor. Um, this is all this is for. So the amount of trade unlock stones you'll need for two weapons, 600. This is buying the first trait line for these items because I believe for the first few weeks of Talandre, the T2 items are going to be so expensive, it's not going to be worth it for you to actually buy the item to unlock the trait. It's going to be more feasible to use trait unlock stones. That being said, obviously, you're not going to have enough trade unlock stones to unlock everything. So obviously you're probably going to want to prioritize your weapons first and then start moving into like a 2-piece set bonus or maybe a 4-piece set bonus depending upon how many trade unlock stones you have. However, for these weapons, for just two weapons, you need 600 to unlock the first few traits, the first trait lines. For your armor, 1800. For your accessories, 1500. For 5 accessories, the materials you'll need is 2850 precious powder, 2,850 or 2,850 crystals. This is literally just from 6 plus 6 to plus 12. And in order to craft the growth stones and level from plus 6 to plus 12, these are materials you need. Now, keep in mind, you only get to plus 6 if you take a plus 9 T1 item and smash it into your plus 0 T2 item. That'll get it to plus 6. And then from plus 6 to plus 12, you're going to need all these materials to max it out. Same thing for your armor. For 6 pieces of armor, you're going to need 3,420 precious powder, stone ore, and crystal. And for 2 weapons, because it's double the amount of precious powder for weapons, you're going to need 2,000 precious powder, 1,000 rubrics ore, 1,000 polished crystals. And then for your mastery, this mastery is more specific to staff dagger. What I recommend every person watching this video to do is map out the materials you need specific for your mastery, the mastery that you want. For staff dagger, these are the masteries I'm going for. So the materials I need are specific to my masteries. This is the only part that's really class specific. But I recommend that everyone do it, map it out. That way you know what you need going into the expansion. Because without getting level 90 on both weapons, you're not going to be able to get the epic node. And transferring like a level 20 current weapon, once they raise the cap to 200, your 20 is going to go to probably about like 60. Okay, so we're going to have to grind a little bit to get to 90, but we will be at 90 relatively soon if we're farming public dungeons consistently. So you want to aim to at least map out the first 90 levels of each weapon, your main hand, your offhand. And for my level 90 weapons, I need 222 Marand, 103 Stallone, 125 Rubrics, and 6 Emery, just for the mastery. So you guys can already see how much materials you're going to need for your gear and your mastery moving into Talandre. Obviously, you're going to be able to get some of this as things go on, but this is one thing you should take away from this. You're not going to be able to just feasibly move into T2 instantly. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be a transition. And in order for it to be a proper transition, you need to make sure your T1 gear also synergizes with your T2 gear. If you're endurance in T1, you need to go endurance in T2. If you are evasion in T1, you need to go evasion in T2. Otherwise, it's going to invalidate your gear thresholds, and it's going to completely mess up the synergy of your gear. That being said, the way that you're going to map out this mastery is by using Questlog. I've made multiple builds. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit, but For majority of my builds, I'm going to use this mastery. You don't really want to have multiple mastery per build. Not anymore. You want to have one mastery line or one mastery template that works for the type of builds that you want to run. And for my dagger mastery, I'm going to be going for Great Killer, which takes 90 Marin and 90 Ore. In order to get here, you have to map out the rare and the uncommon. So I recommend you guys do this. For my staff, I'm going for Epic Node Eternal Prayer for the 20% defense. So again, 90 Stallone, 90 Marin. You're going to need Marin for any Epic Node. So Marin is going to be essentially like really essential farming this when you get it during your contracts. Also, you can get it from public dungeons, etc. But same thing. How you get to the epic node? You got to map out the rare, the uncommons, the rare and the uncommons, and each of these take solent as well as ore. So you really need to map this out and calculate the amount of ores as well as. I mean, you're gonna need a lot of solent. That's the only reason I didn't put solent on here. I recommended 200 million solent, 100 million plus. But you're never going to have enough solent, so just stack as much as you can. That's the only reason I didn't put solent on here, because you need so unbelievably amount of solent, there's no reason to count it all, because you'll never have enough. You also need solent for substance transfusion, in which I'll come back to that in a little bit. But, alright, so these are the materials that you'll need for your gear and your mastery. That's the most essential part. Now, how you're going to get some of these materials is the daily content that's available. Now, the way it works in KR is the T2 dungeons, the T2 tokens work for T3 dungeons. The T1 and T2 dungeons are for dimensional contract tokens. So dimensional contract token 1 works for T1 and T2 dungeons. Dimensional contract token 2 works for T3 dungeons. If Amazon follows this same logic as KR, then I think it may be worth it to save your dimensional contract 2s closer to Talandre launch to 4,500. That way, you could ideally run those T3 dungeons with those tokens. Hopefully Amazon doesn't give us 3 different tokens. That would be really insane. But it is worth to save your T2 tokens for T3 dungeons just in case they make it or replicate it the same as it is in KR. That being said, there's also contracts that's part of your daily content. And the most important contracts that you want to do are the ones that contain Precious Blessing Pouch. The Precious Blessing Pouch has a chance to drop ally resistance contracts as well as T2 gear. The T2 gear is obviously very important for traits as well as if some of your important gear is located within those blessing pouches. However, the ally resistance contracts can be used to farm public dungeons. They will net you extra materials as well as abyss coins. These abyss coins can be utilized to purchase some of the best in slot accessories as well as gear. So the most important daily or resistance contract to get from Herba Village is the blessing pouch. After the blessing pouch, you're going to want to get the materials that you're missing from the previous list here. This is assuming that you've already maxed out your skills, which I hope most of you have maxed out your skills moving from the previous content. However, if you haven't, then getting your skills relatively high, parchment is going to be important. However, the ore I think is a bit more important because you're only going to get ore and materials from T1 and T2 dungeons. The T3 dungeons or the tier 3 content does not drop ore. It does not drop the materials that you need to level up your gear. So you're going to get the majority of those materials from public dungeons as well as dailies. Okay? Hopefully that all makes sense. Now, another thing that's included is the same from the previous document that was created by my homie Trey. We have a daily checklist. The daily checklist doesn't really change. You're going to be doing most of the same daily content. It's just different content that you're going to do. So this is what you focus on primarily. Now, the things I want to recommend to each and every one of you watching this video. I recommend you to make multiple builds for T2, right? Making multiple builds for T2 is highly important for one specific reason. We do not know if we are getting all of the T2 gear that is located within KR. When KR released Talandre, there were thresholds of gear. There was a first wave of T2 gear, and then there was a second wave of T2 gear. We don't know in global if we're going to get all of that gear at once. Therefore, it's important to make multiple builds. That way you have build diversity. Once we understand the exact piece of gear that we get, then you'll be prepared because you likely will have more options. Okay, I have a melee evasion build. I have a range endurance, magic range endurance build that's transitioning from T1. It uses several T1 pieces and several T2 pieces. Then I have a full magic range T2 build, and then I have a ranged evasion build and a melee ranged endurance build. Um, Keep in mind when you're making these builds, these thresholds. For endurance, you're gonna want to reach 2,000 endurance. For evasion, like if it's melee evasion, you need over 3,000 melee evasion. You look at my melee evasion build. I'm currently sitting at 3,061 melee evasion. I could take this higher. My range evasion is 2.2k. For if you're going like to counter range users, again 3,000 range evasion. If you're going for magic users, again 3,000 magic evasion. Whoever you want to counter, you need to hit that 3k mark because people are going to stack so much hit, especially if someone goes a full hit build with chaos runes. You're going to need so much evasion to make it worth it. For endurance, it's a little bit more reliable because most people are not going to stack over like 2.3, 2.4k crit. So if you can stack 2k, 2.2k endurance before masteries, before buffs, before all the changes and artifacts, then you're relatively okay. That being said, you're going to want to get the threshold as high as possible. And then damage reduction is highly important. If you're going melee range, you're going to want to be over like 60 damage reduction. Melee range endurance, you're going to want to be above 60 damage reduction. These are just things to keep in mind when you're making your builds, but I highly recommend you make multiple builds because you want to have a build diversity. That way you have options once we know exactly what gear is coming. That being said, for Staff Dagger, I've already mapped it out. For Spear Dagger, I will map it out. I'm going to try and get to my other builds, you guys, but I have a lot of builds to update, so please bear with me. Drop a comment below on what builds you want to see, and I'll try and get to it as soon as I can. Now, the next part, again, Battlegrounds did not come initially with Talandre. However, Battlegrounds are now with Talandre. So I think it's important to prepare in case we do get Battlegrounds. That way you're not behind. However, there is a chance we don't get Battlegrounds. Without Battlegrounds, there's no artifacts. Without Battlegrounds, there's a lot of T2 accessories that are harder to get. So this artifact section, I mapped it out based off of what I currently have in KR. Now I will show you that within KR, like the Nebula Stones here, these are acquired from the Battleground, which is the PP Island, which is a permanent PP Island. It's insanely, like, I cannot stress to you guys how insanely fun it is. Just grinding open world, always having the chance for PvP. There is a PvE zone for those of you that want a PvE, but it's majority PvP. And as you see here, not only do you get artifact selection chests, you get T2 accessories, but you also get Nebula Stones. There's chests that spawn, and the chests have a chance to drop you the majority of these items, the expected rewards, right? Quick plug: there's a kill, there's a kill record, which is amazing. So you're tracking PvP, you're getting fat loot, get fat rewards, you're getting precious blessing pouches, and these precious blessing pouches have a chance to drop you T2 gear. I've actually gotten one of the best in slot accessories recently, and transferred my T1 piece into my T2 piece. And then also the Nebula Stones I got from farming there as well. You can use these Nebula Stones to either buy trade unlock stones, precious blessing pouches, or essence to craft other stones. You can also craft a chest, a Nebula chest, which this chest can be used in order to get RNG chance for T2 gear. So literally every week with these greater Nebula Stones, it is so important to do Battleground content because you're going to get T2 gear. You can also recharge your time, which I'm not sure I really recommend unless somehow you got 15 stones and you were able to get all of your free T2 gear chances or T2 chest chances. But I'm just showing you guys this to let you know how important this content really is. And depending upon whether or not we get it, you really want to plan that way. You know how to get the best in slot T2 accessories. The other way that you're going to get T2 accessories or T2 gear, other than the ones that I previously mentioned, is going to be material transmutation. Now, you can transmute T1 gear, right? Like, let's say I took it to T5. You take it to the max tier, it goes from, we currently have T3 in the current content. Talandre comes, you can raise it to conversion tier 5. Tier 5 unlocks epic equipment 2 at a higher percentage. So you can, for the conversion tier 5, you can see the percentages here, right? Group 1, group 2, group 3, it's a 1% chance to get T2 gear. Group 4, it's a 4% chance to get some of these T2 weapons, and then you can also get materials and trait resonance. So material transmutation is absolutely important for trait resonance so that you can unlock the traits once you have max traded a piece of gear, which is going to give you another stat line. So that's one reason to do material transmutation, period. Those are guaranteed. Trait resonance stones are guaranteed on every transmutation. However, the next thing that you're going to want to go for is, honestly, most of the gear that I've gotten in T2 has come from this material transmutation. So I've gotten the majority of my gear set literally from material transmutation. And like I said, based on the tier that you get to, you can see the percentages here for the items you get. So going to conversion tier 4, it's 4.1% on group 1, 4.1% on group 5. So you can go to T5 and have a very, 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 very slight higher chance, or you can go to T4. But either way, you are getting a chance at some of the best in slot gear for your class. You can look through here and kind of tell what's the pieces you want to go for. But this is highly recommended way. However, it costs a lot of solent. It is 1 million solent per try, not to mention all the materials you're losing. And you're not really getting much precious magic powder. That being said, those are all the methods that you guys are going to want to focus on moving into Talandre T2. Hopefully, this information prepares you for launch. Those that are prepared will be ahead. Those that don't will be behind. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Peace and love, gang.